Well, hey there. This review is for The Alters, a game about clones, making alternative versions with alternative memories, all for a means to survive a really shitty situation. Making clones and such of yourself has always been a trope in movies and shows, but it's not often seen in video games. And I think they tackle this subject pretty head on and do a great job of telling a compelling narrative while doing so. As most of my reviews go, there will be spoilers, so if you don't want that, then come back later or continue anyways, because I'm not here to tell you what to do. But getting into it, let me mention lightly here about the AI stuff and some of the backlash that others gave it. I really don't like AI in the sense of generative tools, but from what I could see online regarding the game and the AI prompts that were left in there, it seems like they basically had AI generated text as a substitute on background pieces while they worked on a majority of the game, and they created actual lore and other things to replace it, but then forgot to do so. So it's not like a deal breaker for me. It's not the end of the world. It's not great. It's not good, but it's kind of whatever, right? Whether you believe them or not, and whether or not you want to support it or not, that's up to you. But if it was just text on a screen that could have been like lore Ipsum stuff or anything like that, then I honestly don't really care. It wasn't really an art asset or something like that that was made through generative tools, so for me, it's not really going to affect me that much. But others felt pretty strongly about this, especially since it slipped through to that final product, and it sparked a bigger conversation, as it has over the last few years about anything that's AI generated and connected to games. But that could be an entire video on its own to have a conversation about, but for me, it's just words on a screen, so I'm not that worried about it. But with that random little controversy out of the way, let's get into the meat of the review. Narrative is going to be a big point here, so it's going to be a large section, and I'll say it up front. It hooked me pretty early on. As someone who loved the movie Interstellar, I for sure got some of those vibes here. The Alter starts off with some small inspirational quotes leading to our main character Jan talking about his thoughts and reflections for going on this mission. Some flashbacks occur, we fade to black, and then bam, we wake up with the camera panning to the beach, where we're leaving what seems to be an escape pod, and Jan starts calling out on this possibly hostile planet, asking if anyone else from his crew has survived. We come across multiple other pods where everyone's gone. They didn't survive the crash and they all died on the way down. The environment looks pretty fucking bleak though. It's pouring rain, there's darkness everywhere, jagged rocks to be found around every corner, and it does not seem to be a location that is welcoming or easy to survive in. But who cares about that, bitch? We're here to make clones, motherfucker. So after discovering our giant wheel-like base thing, and after we survive some crazy radiation outside, we start to settle in a little. Taking a look at our resources on hand, what sort of rooms we kind of already have within our base, and tinkering around, we attempt to make contact with someone via like radio phone system, but there's no luck and we're on our own and just gotta figure it out. The only thing that we're able to make out from this attempt to communicate with someone is that we need to escape the sun that is very deadly. So we're then sort of thrown into the majority of what the gameplay will consist of, going out of the ship and gathering resources, discovering new areas, avoiding radiation, and other things while out there. But don't worry, we'll chat more about those other things in just a little bit. But while out and about gathering, we discover some trinkets that we brought on the mission as a reminder of home, and we also discover some places and things that we can't reach yet. A little bit of like a Metroid-esque type system here, where this will happen a couple of different times as you progress the story, where you'll get something that'll expand the gameplay and allow for more tools and items to traverse the world and the places around you. I want to explain a bit of the gameplay here because it does feed back into the overall story, but the reason that we're out here on this planet and gathering new things to build new rooms and etc., repair our ship, maybe store some food supplies, or possibly discover where we might need to go before we continue. Everything that we do takes resources with nodes and such out in the open world area, where you're allowed to just gather almost an infinite amount of items as long as they fit within your storage limits. You'll need specified amounts of these before you're able to complete certain missions and to avoid the sun. Our first thought while being here fully alone in this planet is to survive. Luckily, we have a quantum computer who is able to run calculations and dictate what is needed for us to to allow for a specific outcome. It is a big-ass supercomputer that not only does it store a lot of information, but it's able to process it quickly and effectively. It becomes vital to our overall success and survival, but this game is also structured on a day and night cycle where we can complete a bunch of stuff during the day and then we must return to the ship at night, for one because we're tired, but also for radiation. And these days are vital as they pass because over time the sun does get closer and closer, but if it reaches you, it's just straight up game over. So we gather some resources, we discover this new material that is kind of the reason why we're on this expedition in the first place, and that's rupidium. This very crucial material is isolated to this planet specifically. It's also what allows us to make our clones, but also to survive altogether. It's also the reason why we're here, but some of the people overseeing our mission hear about the success in finding it, and this kind of complicates things. They tell us pretty plainly that making clones, or branching as they call it, is going to be the only way that we can survive. More bodies to allow for more work to be done in a more efficient manner. There are requirements to make at least 2 of them for story reasons, but any additional ones are really just up to you. And actually, I forgot here previously that you do need 4 of them, but anyways, I made 5 in total, but I stuck with my original 2 for as long as possible. Making these clones causes a bit of an issue though, because apparently it's highly illegal to do so, meaning that if we ever do get rescued, we could go to prison, or we could try to hide our clones, or do something to maybe get rid of them. So that is the moral dilemma. Bring life into the world knowing that it's not allowed, but it is needed for survival. And then what happens after they've helped you in the mission of survival? Well, I'll get into those decisions a little later for the finality of the game in a moment, but throughout your time escaping the sun, gathering resources, etc., the characters have their own personalities. They will bicker and fight with you or each other, or they might just get along pretty well with you naturally, which we'll chat more about that in the gameplay section, but the people that we speak to on the radio, they're trying to help. It seems like they're maybe not in it for our best interest, and the only person that truly seems to care about us or feel anything is our ex-wife. We chat with her on occasion. I was a bit untrusting of her because it seemed like she just wanted to do what was quote-unquote objectively right and not necessarily what was right for me and my dudes, my clones, in any given moment. Up front, it was really hard to tell, but by the end I realized that she was probably right, and the other guys that I was chatting with, who were basically just evil corporation dudes, they turned out to be just that. And I think the overall narrative relating to people that we never really meet and only have these phone conversations with is a little bit boring. It's sort of the requirement because obviously they're probably hundreds of thousands of miles away, and you have multiple choices throughout some of these dialogue sections that can lead to consequences, and then that will lead to different endings. I ended up accidentally siding with the evil corporation dude, but I thought I could trust him, and I was very wrong because every option felt like a lose-lose. And yes, he might have been the lesser of 2 evils, and I think the final outcome that I got was actually a pretty happy one for the most part. I'll cap off the narrative structure here with a few more thoughts. So as we know, we're escaping the sun, trying to obtain as much rupidium as possible, survive while also not causing too many problems in the meantime, because each time we are in a new zone, some sort of anomaly blocks us or just needs to be investigated to move forward. This is done through crafting specific items and so on, but by the end of the game, you're climbing this giant tree made of weird energy shit where these anomalies that can hurt you are just fucking everywhere. It's a bit of a race against time as you reach the top as quickly as possible. You're doing this to end up opening the barrier that is blocking your saviors from flying down to rescue you. This barrier is covering pretty much the entire planet, and we have to destroy it if we ever want to escape. So alright, we take the machine to the top of this weird tree thing, we destroy that barrier, we jump off, and we're done. Then you have some final vital choices to make, which lead to some good or bad endings. The one that I chose was to hide my altars when I was leaving the planet. This way we could try to have a bit of a more peaceful life without being just either murdered or put in prison, but also still maybe handing over the rupidium, which was the primary mission, since I felt that if I didn't just hand it over, they would probably literally just gun us down the moment that they landed. This resulted in our main guy Jan going on trial for making altars and such, but the other Jans got to live a prosperous life. You get a lot of choices that you must make, and sadly, although I really liked the technician the most and we were basically best friends with him throughout the majority of the game, one vital story mission had him turn on me. And when this occurred, he ended up stealing resources from the base, taking another altar with him, the botanist that I had, and striking out on his own. He created his own shelter that was kind of far away from us because he felt like I wasn't running things right and he wanted to kind of do his own thing. I ended up giving him some resources and accepted his apology, and we both went our separate ways. This was a sad part of the story that I got a little bit emotional about because the technician was my homie, dude. He was my guy, and he just turned on me because one vital decision that I made. And this can happen in real life sometimes. It's super interesting to see this play out in the altars because other decisions that you make would play out in other ways. So keeping your altar's thoughts and feelings into consideration is extremely vital to how your story will play out, and also who you'll go and end the game with. Learning these individual quirks of each character once they hatch out of the womb is a little bit of a fun game that you get to play. Then you give them some gifts, you play some beer pong, watch a movie, and it all adds up to connections that you foster, and they all feed into the gameplay as well. If they aren't happy, then they won't work as long. They will also make pissed off little remarks as you walk past them, but then as stated, they could also just leave you, taking resources and a body with them, making your work even harder because now you're down a few people, food, and so on. I really enjoyed the gameplay hook in the altars, going back and forth from mining to managing my base to exploration and melting these transparent blob guys. Everything just felt pretty dang good. I do want to touch very lightly on the music and audio here. Jan is the biggest portion that I want to speak about. Every single altar has a different tone or inflection behind their voice based on the personality that they have. This is all done by a single actor. Most people in real life can make a few different funny noises or voices, and I myself can do a good handful that I pull out on occasion, but this voice actor, Alex Jordan, who he does the voice for every single Jan in the game, does it with perfection and precision. There was only a single time where it seemed that something was added in post with an incorrect inflection that made me laugh quite a bit, because it was for the scientist who is always supposed to sound like a bit higher pitched and a bit of a nerdy sounding voice, but one portion he randomly sounded deeper like the security guard. And this only happened one time, but it was hilarious because this accidental voice swap occurred and I was like, what the fuck? And then it went back to normal. But moving on from the voices, the time moving forward mechanic has a distinct fast forwarding motion and sound to it, making your actions feel like they're going at super speed. The enemies and radiation all sound great, giving a distinct vibe of, oh shit, I need to avoid this. The audio mix of the entire game is done extremely well, and my biggest disappointment here, honestly, is with the music. There's some, just not a lot, and I wish there was more. In the lounge, there are some good songs that you can choose and listen to, and I really enjoyed the ones that came on. I just wish it would happen more often with more variety. Alright, the last parts that I want to mention in this review, which it was supposed to be a shorter one, but apparently I had a lot to say, so whatever. Anyways, the graphics are highly detailed and pretty realistic, but they do come at a bit of a cost. The game looks a little funky sometimes in some of the scenes. I also had to turn down some of the settings just because it wasn't running quite as smooth or it didn't quite look as right. The sharpness was a little bit weird when I first started the game, but technically it plays pretty okay. Sometimes I did get stuck on things, and the worst offender here was teleporting between the mining nodes. Jan would just end up floating like 3 or 4 feet above the ground right next to the mining outpost, which I could like run in circles, but he wouldn't really go anywhere. He would just stay floating there pretty much. So it forced me to teleport away and then try again, only to sometimes get stuck again, meaning I had to run all the way from that first mining outpost or somewhere else, and that sort of kind of defeated the purpose of the fast travel. With the mission structure, it's also a bit of a pain point that I want to mention. You get told that you need to do very specific things, but without a time frame. But then the sun starts sneaking up on you like it always does, so you start to work on those quests, and well, sometimes you just flat out run out of time. I had multiple times where I could not complete the main quest in the time that it gave me, because I just couldn't move forward and escape the impending doom of the sun, because I thought that I only had a few small steps left, and then it would just randomly be like, hey, the next thing takes 2 full days. And I was only 1 day away from being melted by the fucking sun. So I had to restart at an earlier period to account for that, and then once I completed that portion, then there was another follow-up mission that required another entire day. So this caused me to reset again to a slightly earlier spot. I restarted that one section about a dozen times because this continued to happen for this mission, where I needed to go earlier and earlier to account for it needing like 5 or 6 days, which made my gameplay time go up by about 2 hours just from restarting the same section over and over again. And all of that just to be early enough in the time frame to complete the mission without getting destroyed by the sun. Getting annoyed is putting it lightly here, because I know they do this to keep you working toward the mission without having a definitive cutoff, but for a game that does have so many definitive things like resources and required gathering, people and bodies that need to be managed, everything is finite, everything matters, but the quest structure is just kind of figure it out as you go, I guess. And I got really annoyed by this, especially for the final mission. So you have to go to the top of this weird tree thing and plant this machine down to break the barrier on the planet. I had to replay this after completing it because after spending, 45 minutes going through completing this final mission, at the very end it just goes, hey, we need 1 extra data pass, which it does not tell you ahead of time until you have completed it. So of course I tried to manage my time effectively and complete the final mission on the last day before the sun comes. But of course, I was too late in the time frame, the sun came, and I fucking died. So it was very annoying needing to restart this entire 45-minute section or so just because I needed 1 extra day apparently that it could have told me about ahead of time. Also, this game can be a bit brutal sometimes, not only with the difficulty on occasion, but my miner dude just decided to randomly chop his own arm off, and it was because of a phantom pain. He lost his arm before he was being reincarnated in this world as an altar, where he still had both arms. That shit was really weird and awesome, but he basically was like, hey, I've got this phantom pain, I'm gonna chop my fucking arm off because I remember not having an arm and here I do have one. So then we made a prosthetic for him and he was fucking good. But finishing up this review, I want to say, although I do have some negatives, I did enjoy this game. It wasn't amazing, it's not blowing my socks off, but it wasn't bad. It had some slight annoyances along the way. They really had me like, fuck man, this kind of sucks in the moment, but I restarted and I pushed past it and I kept chugging along. The day-to-day gameplay and managing systems was always engaging, determining who is working where, fitting resources where they could go up to that capped limit of my base, and determining what was vital to keep or let go in certain scenarios. It made for a heck of a good time on my roughly 20 hours until I completed the game. While reloading some of those saves, I did test out a few alternative personalities from different altars, branching out in different directions. I feel like some of these can get pretty wacky and goofy, leading to a fun time with additional playthroughs. So if you're into astrophysics and crazy fictional ideas within, also some bit of management sims, then this is the game for you. It is $35, which to me is a bit of a sweet spot for the price. It has enough gameplay and hours to warrant this, along with having new and interesting ideas that I haven't seen in other places. So I say if you're interested, get it at full price. But otherwise, that is going to be it for this review. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, please do all that dumb YouTube stuff because it does really help. I promise. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever, yada yada, and I will see you next time.